So what I'm going to do is just give ourselves like a little bit of an outline. So, or give myself a little bit of an outline. You don't have to do this. So I'm just going to draw a big pumpkin on my small sheet. Okay, and again, I'm not going to do the grass. Um, we're just kind of ignoring the grass from our reference photo. Okay, so here is a rough outline. I'm not actually going to draw any more details other than this, just the size and then the approximate stem. All right, so we have our big pumpkin on our 5x7. The paper is dry, and we're just gonna go put paint on it. And so it's essentially, technically, it's what they call wet on dry. We're just painting wet paint onto dry paper. And what I'm going to do for this approach is keep the first wash in that sense kind of light. I don't want to go too dark too fast. I know I'm going to be doing wet on wet in here, so I don't have to go too dark or don't want to go too dark at the beginning. So it's kind of a diluted mixture of the same color from before. It's Pyrrole Scarlet with a little bit of Hansa Yellow Medium. And by now it's probably a little bit dirty in the sense of it has a little bit of crimson in it. I've been painting on this palette for a while, but it's all the same colors and that's fine. So I'm going to come in and use this sort of lighter color, and I'm going to paint around the stem. You know, if you want to, you could actually put masking fluid on, but I'm just going to paint around it. And then you can tell already I'm being a little bit more careful about the shape as I go around this, as I go around the pumpkin already, just to kind of, I'm just observing a little bit more than I was before with the other exercises. So we can just come around. And even if you run out of paint here and it's a little bit lighter, that's fine. Because we do have highlights in here that we want to preserve a little bit, since we're doing this a little bit more realistic in that sense than before. So again, I'm almost treating this like a first wash. And there's a little bit of white part that I don't mind leaving, little white spaces and gaps that have happened from just like the natural painting process. I don't mind leaving. Okay, so there's our sort of first pass. And I'm going to come in and mix up a little bit more of a darker color, more saturated. So if it means adding more paint to the puddle that you made, that's what I would do. And then now I'm going to start and put in a little bit more of the detail. So if there's darkness here, I'm just looking at the areas of darkness and shadow. And it's not our final, but we're starting to make more passes at it. So you can see I'm starting to add in sort of, oh, there's like this dark area where there's a rib. You can see there's a little bit of background happening already here because it's darker, or sorry, drier over there. So I'm going to work quickly and then go back to fix that in just a second. So I'm going to keep all of this going. We'll probably do a little bit of lifting to come back here. Okay. So I'm going to rinse my brush out and get it a little bit dry and then come back and fix up this cauliflower section here. So I do want, this does rely on a timing thing, right? Because if it dries, you'll get that hard edge. So I wanted to move over here quickly. And you want to make sure you don't introduce more water. So that's why I dried my brush off before I came back and did this. So let's do a little bit more of darkening. But while I'm here with my sort of damp brush, I'm going to lift a little bit. So now I'm going to look a little bit at the highlights. And I'm only lifting now just because there's a part of me that's afraid I will miss this window. only because I'm talking to you, and sometimes that will cause me to talk too long, and then I won't be able to actually lift because this paint will dry. So I'm gonna do it while I'm here. So you could probably, if you're painting faster than me, could do this at a different time. So if you look at the photograph, there's a couple of just like light spot, like it's just lighter back here, and there's reflections sort of on the top ridge of this pumpkin, so you can lift a little bit here. Okay. You just have to be a little bit careful about introducing too much water. And so then I have that sort of carved out. So now what I'm going to do is come back and do the shadowing at the bottom and then pull it back up. The timing is important. You can kind of see I have a little bit of cauliflower happening, and that's just a timing thing. You want to make sure that your paper's not drying too much. And we've talked about this before. So just make sure that if it does start to dry and and you don't want to ruin it, like this is fine, because hopefully you're feeling like this is a good exercise and it's not something that is feeling too precious. So you can just experiment with it and play along with what's going on and just see what happens. Sometimes we just have to do things to see what happens, and then we know how to address it later, or just understand a little bit more like what it feels like when we're painting this way. Sometimes a lot of this is coming down to just feeling and experience. And so doing these little exercises without having a final product that you're trying to get to is helpful, because hopefully it's helpful because it doesn't make you feel like your painting's getting ruined, or you're somehow losing something, or you had wasted your time because you started something that you wanted to complete, and it went the wrong way. That makes sense. Like, you started something, you're like, oh, this is going to be great, and then halfway through you feel like you ruined it, and then you wasted your time painting. I don't know, maybe that's just me that happens to, but definitely happens to me. So you can see these little cauliflowers. Timing thing for sure. So I'm going to try and fix that a little bit in a second. But what I'm going to do, because this part is wet, is add more shadow. So we've already got the darker parts of our shadow. So now I'm going to add in a little bit of brown to it. So you can just take burnt sienna and add it to your orange, or you can mix up that same dark brown that we use for the stem. I tend to just take that and start to mix it into some of these colors here that I already have on my palette. So like this, you can see how dark it got all of here all of a sudden. So I'm just going to use this sort of at the bottom while this is all wet. And then hopefully by the time I'm done painting this and talking, I can go back up here and fix the color. So I'm adding a little bit of red in to the brown, just because I don't know, I see red when I'm doing this. Maybe you don't, or you do. But I see red a lot in the crevices. Okay, so you can see that this part's all dry, right? And I'm getting these harder lines here. Fine, I'm going to try and soften them a little bit. And then if it's really bothering you, what you would need to do at this point is just stop and then dry the whole thing and then come back, okay? Which is not what I'm doing right now. I'm actually going to go in and soften these edges, which is done by rinsing my brush off completely, drying it, so it's like just a little bit damp, and then running it along the edges of these little sections. And so that's sort of how I'm doing. I'm kind of purposely leaving a little bit of hard edges here. So you can see I'm just softening these. Some of these, like these kind of ripply background edges, are kind of nice, It just depends on what you want to do here, or this look that you want. So again, I think what is nice about these is you're not trying to end up with this final painting. You're just kind of practicing these, how these things feel. Lifting is it's like you're just practicing these things. Lifting, observing, back runs. These are all the things that you end up practicing when you do it, like these little exercises like this. I'm actually going to do, I'm going to splash a little bit of paint on here because I feel like I see little speckles. So if you use like clean water and then you just tap, then it should create little white speckles. Or big ones. Depends on what you're doing. But so there. I think, for me, I feel like it's kind of a nice way to stop. This is a nice place for me to stop. I'm just lifting a little bit more. Start from the pumpkin part, and then we'll do a little bit of work on the stem. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit more of this brown, this like dark brown, which for me is Payne's Gray mixed with burnt sienna. And you can add in a little bit of the orange you were using if you want to. And then I'm going to do, just kind of take my brush and then do little speckle dabs at the top. And then we'll bring it down imperfectly, because if you do an imperfect line, it'll look a little bit more natural, with little skipping and things like that. And then we'll just capture these bumps here. I'm still trying to keep this, light for me. Light, I mean loose. I just think I like this feeling of it being a little bit abstract, yet not. We've gotten a little bit more realistic, but in some ways it's still kind of abstract. All right, so this is my wet on dry pumpkin, the one that I feel like I spent a little bit more time on. It has a little bit more dimension and shadow. And, it's not perfect. I think it's a great exercise. And, I definitely have my own criticisms of it, things I wish it looked differently. But all in all, I want you to remember that when you're doing things like this, when you're taking a little part of a painting, this is a great way to break down a bigger reference photo or something that you're trying to do is to study one part of it. So instead of just going for it and trying all 3 pumpkins at once, doing one at a time is helpful like this. So for me, doing one pumpkin, it's starting to really get me to understand like what worked, what didn't work, especially doing this on the paper that I'm planning to use. And then experimenting with different styles. Did I like doing this wet on dry, just like going straight onto the paper like this with the background? Or am I going to like the wet on wet approach? And it's just about us exploring what we like to do best and what we enjoy the most. So every time we paint, we always learn something from it, whether or not the painting turned out or it didn't. And I think that that's what's important to remember. So maybe you don't like what you did. Like me, I don't really love the way this turned out. Maybe there are things about it you would change, but no matter what, you walked away from it learning something.